Fishing, a mechanic that has been around since the early days of Don't Starve, and has received a massive overhaul in Don't Starve Together's Hook, Line, and Inker update. Today we will be focusing on this somewhat underutilized mechanic, where I will attempt to go from a fishing noob, who can only comfortably catch wobsters and freshwater fish, to a fishing master who can catch every single fish in the game with ease. But first, how is this challenge going to work? Well, it's simple. I must catch every single type of fish and put them into fish scale-o-matics to create the ultimate aquarium. Sounds pretty easy, right? Yeah, that's why I added a few more limitations. 1, I would have to do all of this before the end of the first year. And 2, I would have to have a water-based diet. If it doesn't come from the water, I can't eat it. So berries are off the table, but kelp isn't. Meats are off the table, but frog legs aren't. You get the gist. And finally, thanks to one mod, and the only mod we would be using during this run, we will drain sanity incredibly fast on land. So land-based living is unsustainable, and we are encouraged to live our days out on the ocean. Will I be able to complete this ultimate fishing challenge? Well, let's load into our brand new default world with my favorite character, Wilson, to find out. Day 1 starts with us doing all the Don't Starve Together basics, you know, gathering resources and doing some light exploring. Except unlike my farming challenge and many of my other challenges, this challenge has us on a severe time limit. Remember, we can't eat anything that doesn't come from the water, so if we don't find a frog pond before dusk, there's a good chance we wouldn't be eating tonight. Also, thanks to the mod that basically turns us into wood legs, we currently are draining sanity at the same rate that our hunger drains, if not a little faster. We didn't have a lot of time to prepare, but we still had to prepare if we wanted any chance of completing this challenge. Dusk fell and we hadn't found a frog pond, so it was becoming clear that tonight may have to be spent hungry. We did, however, manage to find a pig house, which provided some easy resources, a spear and some gears, and finally a crockpot set piece which we hammered down for some resources to eventually make our own crockpot. Speaking of crockpots, how would I be allowing myself to use those? Well, I decided that crockpots would be allowed, unlike my farming challenge, but only if all ingredients were water-based. Meaning meatballs made with 1 fish and 3 berries aren't allowed, but meatballs made with 1 fish and 3 kelp are. You know, just in case I wasn't suffering enough with this challenge already. But hey, some crockpot usefulness is better than none, right? We end the day by using our Wilson torch abilities to stay productive into day 2. Day 2 is when it started to sink in that I may have bit off more than I could chew when it came to this challenge. Our hunger was already halfway gone, and we had no valid food at all. And to add insult to injury, our sanity was also unsustainably draining. On the bright side, today we made some progress. Finding a spider den, we quickly raid it for all of the silk it could provide, before heading up towards the bee queen biome. There were lots and lots of flowers here, but they would only provide temporary relief. The only true cure to our sanity drain would be getting out into the water. Just as things started to look hopeless, we had finally found the first bite to eat: frogs. One pond may only provide 2 frog legs, but that's more than enough to keep us going, at least into the next day. We find Chester, a valuable companion, before we end the day nearly starving, because I was too stubborn to put down a fire. But hey, at least we could say we made it another day. Day 3 started with us eating one of our frog legs raw. A horrible idea because of our sanity, but it was either that or starve. Or make a fire, but that takes time, and our sanity would have drained the same amount because of that anyway. After that tough choice, we went to fight more frogs for some more dinner, and with 4 frog legs secured, I felt pretty good about our situation. So we absolutely speedran gathering more resources. Anything and everything that could be useful was vacuumed into my inventory: pig houses, spiders, all of it, before we finally settled down near the end of the day and created a science machine, then a think tank, and finally, our first boat, the SS Fisher, aptly named for the types of voyages it would be set out on. Unfortunately, it was far too late, as insanity crept onto us as night fell, and we had to spend the remainder of day 3 fighting our own demons. Day 4 started with us crafting up the essentials: a backpack, oh wait, hunger, right. We should probably get that squared away before it comes back to bite us. We head out to the frog ponds and go absolutely ham. this time actually cooking the legs to give us a slight health benefit and no sanity drain, before finally heading back home and crafting the rest of what we wanted to craft. An alchemy engine, a sea fishing rod, and a tin fishing bin, before taking our boat out for my very first fishing trip. Now, fishing in Don't Starve Together's ocean is a little complex at first, but once you understand it, it becomes much easier. Unlike freshwater fishing, which is literally just wait for something to hook on, then double click to catch your fish, ocean fishing utilizes a simple but somewhat difficult minigame, and it depends on the fish you are trying to catch and what tackles you have equipped. But the main thing you have to know is that you should cast your line into a school of fish, and then once you get a bite, reel that line when it has no tension, and stop reeling when the line has high tension. That's really it. Now, there's a bit more that goes on underneath the whole mechanic, like fish stamina and whatnot, but really that's not as important. Just remember to not reel when you're struggling, and you won't have to worry about lines snapping and losing your tackles. For now, my bobber was twigs and my bait was berries, which may seem primitive, but actually is pretty effective. After a long struggle, I had caught my first ever fish, a mudfish. Now, these suckers pack a punch and won't give in easily, so for my first ever fish, it was actually rather impressive that I caught it on my first try. A great way to transition into day 5. Day 5 started with me honing my fishing skills by catching another mudfish, entering the caves to grab the supplies for a lantern, and finally building our mobile home, setting down a fire pit, an alchemy engine, a tackle receptacle, and a tin fishing bin. We had a place to call home that wouldn't drain our sanity. We even secured our mudfish, which meant that we only had 15 more fish to go. That's when I noticed floating around us is another weird fish. So we go to catch it, and what do you know, it puts up much less of a fight than its muddy cousins. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the popper fish. A fish that instead of dropping fish meat will drop, you guessed it, popcorn. One of the only plant-based dishes that we can eat thanks to this fish existing. But eating them wasn't the only thing on my mind. We also had to secure one for our endgame aquarium, which is exactly what we did. In one day, we had secured 2 types of fish. But remember, they weren't fully secured until we got them into a fish scale-o-matic, and all it would take is extreme hunger or a rogue otter to take these beauties away from us. Unfortunately, extreme hunger did end up hitting, so we had to eat one of our mudfish, who gave us a large fish meat to keep us going, but luckily we still had the extra one, so no loss there. Day 6 started with me heading onto land to begin collecting mushrooms for lures. So I guess now is a good time to talk about tackle. You see, using a tackle receptacle, you can craft a wide variety of tackle. The most important, however, being the 3 different spoons and spinner baits, which require each different mushroom. Sunrise spoons and spinners are excellent at catching fish during the day. Dusky spoons and spinners are excellent at catching fish during the dusk. And finally, night flyer spoons and spinners are excellent at catching fish during night. Spoons are weaker than spinners efficiency-wise, but cost far less and can catch both small and large fish, unlike spinners that can only catch large fish. And both are only slightly better than berries. However, there's one major benefit to using spoons and spinners over organic bait. That being that spoons and spinners are reusable as long as you don't snap your line. But that comes at the cost of you needing to hold all 3 types for the most effective fishing. Unless you somehow get your hands on the rare trinket, the curved spork. There's also the special lures that are provided by Pearl and treasure chests, but those are usually incredibly niche and not exactly required for adequate fishing. But I'll go over the important ones when the time comes. You should also know that organic bait is best left sitting idle in the water for maximum attractiveness, and inorganic bait is best when reeling periodically. Okay, so that's the bait. But what about the twig that I've been using? What is that for? Well, that's the bobber. Bobbers aren't necessary to fish, but they allow you to cast your line farther and more accurately. The best floats are, unsurprisingly, the boss drop floats, but surprisingly, another match is the hardened rubber bung if you manage to find one. Again though, bobbers merely allow your line to be cast farther and more accurately, which can actually be a downside as well, as it can make you struggle more than necessary with the fish in question. Either way, just remember that bobbers are not necessary to fish. Okay, now that small but necessary lecture about tackles is over, did I catch any new fish today? Yes, actually we did. We caught a cornfish, a relative of the popperfish who, instead of providing popcorn, provides, you guessed it, corn. Needless to say, I was very excited about this fish, but this is where I learned a new fishing strategy that made it much, much faster. If you cast the line directly next to your boat, you can sometimes pull the fish up without any struggle at all, and this works with every single fish. Now, it's inconsistent, but I found the most consistent way of pulling it off is by driving your boat and casting while your boat is still slowly drifting. This will net you an incredibly easy, struggle-free fish. However, it's a method I won't be relying on for my first fish catches, as I want to get the feel of each fish's struggle minigame. I wouldn't be able to call myself the ultimate fisherman if I used cheese, would I? Unfortunately, I went against my own word and accidentally used the cheese method with this strange fish that I found later in the day, the fall lounder. Now, catching this fish this early was actually really lucky because the fall lounder is a fish that only appears during autumn, a season that we would only have once, and we're already almost halfway done with. This fish is unique as well as it drops leafy meat, not a fish meat, and can also be traded to Pearl for a blueprint for the stupefying lure. A lure that drops fish stamina to 0%, allowing you to catch them with much less struggle. But trading and eating wouldn't be what we do with this fish, because we needed to save it at all costs to complete our ultimate aquarium. We end the day catching more mudfish, because while they may provide a massive struggle, that big fish steak is worth it and keeps us feeling pretty good. Day 7 started with us actually slowly beginning to feel pretty good. Our garland was giving us sanity and our fish steaks were giving us hunger and health. So I decided to stay on this fishing roll that I was on and attempted to catch this mysterious fish right here. But they were uninterested in my bait and swam off. Oh well, we were only on day 7 and we had already caught the seasonal fish, so we could afford to wait a little bit on this one. We take a pit stop on land to grab some mushrooms and resources, and everything was going great until... I was so stupid. Half health, starving, with nothing edible in our inventory. Was the run over? As I raced back to the boat, I couldn't help but feel embarrassed by this massive mistake. The Don't Starve gods had handed me this amazing run, and I squandered it by leaving my boat without lunch. How would I explain a fail this bad? Luckily, no explaining would have to be done because we made it back, took out our only cornfish, and feasted on the corn from it. A sacrifice that was necessary but felt pretty bad. After this, I realized just how bad this challenge really was, and I had to remember to pack a lunch every time I ventured out into land, as most of the stuff there was inedible towards us. But we had our life, and now had to catch another cornfish, giving us a stressful end to day 7. On day 8, we at least had some good news, as we caught the elusive black catfish. This fish is one of the harder fish to catch, as it will struggle a lot, but you are rewarded with at least one big fish. So we actually spent the entire day catching these catfish, and it was hard work, but it kept us alive until day 9. Well, barely kept us alive would be more honest. On day 9, we began to eat some of our catfish, and to my surprise, one of them gave me both a big fish and a fish morsel. This is actually because that catfish was considered a large catfish. That's right, much like giant crops, fish have weight, but unlike giant crops, fish weight affects their drops. With big fish like catfish, it will cause them to provide a big fish and a morsel. This was great. More food meant, well, more food, so to say I was relieved would be an understatement. As for the new fish today, well, we caught ourselves a needle-nosed squirt, which is a small fish that is a bit difficult to catch as it likes to dart around erratically, and a smolt fry, a fish that is incredibly easy to catch, but is small, so provides only a morsel. We catch a few more fish to eat, grab some resources from the nearby land, and end day 9 by drifting into what I thought was heaven. Day 10 was when we found our first bass shoal. Here's where I found the best fish in the entire game when it came to food. deep bass. These guys spawn in shoals that can be seen from the map and are connected to a boss that would give us some trouble later on in the challenge. But these guys are the best if food is your goal, because deep bass provide almost no fight and are considered large, providing an entire fish steak. This discovery was insane. It allowed us to finally eat like kings, but unfortunately some rogue otters decided our good time was a little too good. They not only stole and ate one of our bass, but also dealt lots of blows to us, leaving us hungry and low health. Great, right back to square one. But alas, we had stayed alive, so the show went on. Now's a good time to mention that I actually decided to not allow myself to eat otters. It's because it felt like a too easy food source for this challenge. They drop the same meat that land-based meaty mobs drop, so they were off the table. This sucked because it meant conflict with them would always be a net loss, but it was required, otherwise they would eat all of our fish. It sucks, but them's the rules. To end the day, we fished up some smolt fries and slowly, very slowly, began to rebuild our stats. Day 11 was a day of discovery. Not because we discovered new land and fought some spiders for some healing glands, but because I discovered that certain fish don't like certain bait. As we can see here, I'm trying to catch a popperfish with a spoon. Unfortunately, little did I know at the time, popperfish are one of the few fish that have a 0% chance to bite spoons. So that was lots of time wasted. Today wasn't a total waste, however, as we did manage to catch some mudfish, arguably an upgrade to the popperfish anyway, so oh well. Then we had a full moon, which meant we could continue sailing. But where exactly are we sailing to? Well, if you look at my inventory, I had found a few jars, and I wanted to make my way over to Pearl's Island to get myself a pinchin winch, which would allow me to pull up powerful treasure from the sea floor. So under the light of the full moon, we make our way over there, but then we get distracted and stop by a desert for some easy tumbleweed resources. I get distracted a lot in this run, by the way. Day 12 started with us in that very same desert, but we weren't there long, as after we had a hearty breakfast of fish steaks and cooked fish morsels, we set sail once again. I tried to catch some more fall lounders, but again, these fish don't really care for spoons, but that didn't stop me from trying. Eventually, I got the hint thankfully and sailed on to catch our favorite dinner as of lately, mudfish. And then after a decent dinner, we continued our great voyage. Day 13 started off alright. I mean, we were going a little bonkers, but thankfully we didn't have the harsh drain of the land out here on the ocean. But we did still have the dusk and night drain to worry about. And our diet didn't exactly allow us to regain that sanity very well. Even a tent would be a bad idea, as food was a major struggle. Speaking of food, we had accidentally attracted an otter on our journey, and unfortunately when one of these guys smell food, they will follow you quite literally forever. But if they aren't swarming you, they are actually relatively easy to dispatch, having the same kiting pattern as a beefalo, and relatively low damage if you have armor on, so we make quick work of it and paddle on. Eventually we coast into Pearl's Island, where I get some free kelp but fail to meet Pearl in time as she's already asleep by the time I hop onto her island. I then see a fish I had never seen before swimming near a highly dangerous seaweed, and I try to catch it. But little did I know this was another fish that refused to bite spoons, and you know, me loving to go into challenges with no knowledge or prep, just continued to try to no avail. Eventually I gave up and set sail for food, something we were dangerously running low on again. Day 14 was mostly filled with us gathering as much kelp as possible because we were rather hungry. Then we came across a few wobster dens. These guys put up no fight at all. You can just hold the reel button and get one every single time. On their own, they don't provide much food, even when cooked, but combined with ice, they would make wobster bisque, a solution to our health problem. Luckily, wobsters can also be kept fresh indefinitely with the tin fishing bin, so that's what we did. Now, wait, why didn't wobster cause the grand fishing guide to come up? Well, I'm gonna be totally honest with you guys. I genuinely thought that wobsters couldn't be put into a fish scale-o-matic, so I left them out of the challenge. Only when I started editing the video is when I learned that they could. And yes, I also didn't realize that freshwater fish and eel could either, so yeah. Luckily, these 3, or 4 fish if you count the lunar wobsters, are the easiest to catch in the game, and all put up absolutely zero struggle, so it's not like it made my life any easier leaving them out of the challenge. And trust me when I say my life was not easy. Day 15 was here and we decided to make it a land-based day. Why? Well, our sanity was not getting any better. There's very little things at sea that can provide sanity, unless we find the lunar island, which isn't very likely, so our best remedy would be finding a flower field and getting as much sanity as we can, which we do. But before the day ends, we take a pit stop at a pond and do some old school freshwater fishing. And man, am I glad that this was overhauled for ocean fishing. Could you imagine how boring it would be if you had to do this to catch the ocean fishies? I mean, as much as it's easy, I'm pretty bored of this. Day 16 marked part 2 of our land-based excursion. We fought frogs for their legs, bees for their stingers, and fish for some more freshwater fishies. We also found some ice. Now, technically, ice doesn't come from water, but it is water. So I would be allowing myself to use it for dishes and eating by itself if worse comes to worse. And then near the end, we fished up some wobsters near the shore, and overall it was a very productive day, but our poor sanity did not like all this landlubbing. We finally made it back to the SS Fisher on day 17, and utilized another mechanic to get our sanity back up. You see, when you craft something new for the first time, your sanity will rise. So we crafted up some new stuff and boom, suddenly all the worries were gone. We also managed to craft up a crock pot, and originally I thought this would be pretty niche because of the ingredient limitations, but it would come around to be the thing that saves us later down the line. We set sail and felt incredibly good about ourselves until we had our first pirate raid. I tried to flee, but there was nothing I could do. Fighting against them meant risking my health, which was hard to replenish, so I submitted to the raid by not retaliating. Luckily, all they wanted to take was my driftwood, and they left a sizable hole in my boat, and it sucked, but hey, it was better than dying, right? Now we would need to figure out how to get our hands on a boat repair kit. On day 18, after the sun had set, we finally made ourselves a boat repair kit and permanently patched our boat. Now you may be wondering, how did my boat not sink? It had a large leak for the better half of a day. Well, introduced in the same update that added those pesky otters, you can now manually plug holes in your boat with items, creatures, or even yourself. This provided temporary relief, but the only permanent fix was the fabled boat repair kit, so that's why I made them. Today was also where I learned something else that would be a staple through this run. Using 1 fish meat and 3 kelp, we would be able to make meatballs. Now, this actually shocked me, and that's because unlike Don't Starve Shipwrecked, where fish meat only has a fish value, Don't Starve Together's fish provide a meat and a fish value. This was amazing, as it meant that 1 small fish morsel could be made into effective meatballs. The same with the large morsels as well. Now I began to feel incredible about this challenge, but we had a long way to go, and a lot of different types of fish to catch. So we weren't exactly out of the water yet. Haha. Seriously though, this did help our food situation dramatically, as now instead of having to catch 3 large fish to hold us over for 1 day, 1 large fish and 3 kelp would be all we would need. On day 19, I stopped by Pearl's Island again, and this time while she was actually awake. I, however, forgot the fact that I need to actually befriend her to trade bottles with her and get the pinch and winch blueprint, and without a fish scale, I didn't know if I actually had any big fish for her, so we spent the day searching for fish. We even tried to catch another fall lounder to trade for friendship, but unfortunately this narwhal scared them off. It was a sad and boring day indeed. Day 20 started with this sick narwhal dive, and then Wilson told me he was getting too wet. So I decided to make an umbrella to keep him happy. I guess he forgot that he was in an ocean-based challenge or something. I don't know. I also made a thermal stone to prepare for the coming winter. Now, winter wouldn't be that bad. We have a fire, a beard, and deerclops won't come for us because we are on the ocean. But funny enough, you may have noticed something. Hound attacks also haven't come for us while we've been on the ocean. That's because hound waves are actually disabled when you are on a boat. Now, if you're scared of hound waves for whatever reason, this can be a very effective trick to avoid them. By counting what days are hound days, you can spend the day at sea and effectively avoid the entire wave. But then, of course, you have to be at sea, which comes with its own dangers. And I mean, if you can't deal with hounds, then you probably don't want to deal with the ocean. Either way, we were preparing for winter, which was almost here. Day 21 started with the world taking on a light blue tint, a signature of winter's arrival. Now, winter meant that we had a new limited time seasonal fish to catch, the ice bream. But I will go over that fish soon. For now, what did we do on our first day of winter? Gathered resources on land for most of the day, and then fished at night. That's when I heard a noise that would send a shiver down the spines of new and experienced players alike. That's the noise that signifies that Wavy Jones, one of the two shadow creatures of the ocean, was coming to get me. Now, Wavy Jones is much different from the other shadow creatures. Rather than attack you directly, he will grief you in ways that will make you wish he was attacking you directly. He can put out your fires, unplug your boat leaks, raise and lower your sails, and all around is just annoying. The worst part? Unlike most shadow creatures that wait until your sanity is below the red tendril threshold, Wavy Jones has a chance to spawn whenever you have less than 70% of your sanity. AKA, he would have a chance to spawn throughout this entire challenge, because you know I'm not getting my sanity under control with these limitations. The good news is that he only spawns during night, and is fairly easy to deal with as you just have to step on his head 3 times. But he does cause us to waste precious fishing time to deal with him, and as a fun fact, he's the reason why I haven't built any sails yet. Because Wavy Jones can literally steal your boat if you don't notice him spawn, and then jump onto land. So, yeah. Luckily, he didn't stop us from making it through the night, and into day 22. Day 22 was kind of meh. The only notable thing I had in my notes is that this strange orange fish, who we would later find out is the hardest fish to catch in the game, stole my only dusky spoon, and that we spent the entirety of the day insane and sailing. Yeah, sounds about right for an ocean-based challenge. All of that was alright though, because on day 23 I had a plan, and that plan would be to collect some sanity, and some beefalo fur. Now, why we are collecting sanity is obvious, and unfortunately I still haven't found the best way to combat the insanity at sea, so flowers were still our best bet. But why beefalo fur? Could we want the beefalo hat to keep us warm? Nope. Funny enough, a requirement for spinnerbait, the most effective segment-based bait in the game, is beefalo fur. So we got some of that today. Unfortunately, the beef were in heat, so we had to deal with one of them, and the whole ordeal took us into day 24. On day 24, as we returned to our beloved boat, the SS Fisher, we collected lots and lots of ice. Now, ice is not only an amazing filler, but it's actually a required ingredient for the fish scale-o-matic. Each one takes 4 ice. So stockpiling early, before summer, when ice can only be found in one specific place, was a really good idea. At the end of the day, we also made ourselves our brand new, highly effective spinnerbaits, only for me to attempt to use it on these small fish, who are only interested in spoons or organic bait. Sometimes I swear I'm the most stubborn being on the planet. Day 25 was here and I angrily rode away from the school of fish that outsmarted my mighty spinnerbait. And that's when I found them. A school of ice bream. Ripe for the catching. Getting these fish would mean a stress-free winter, as long as we don't lose them, of course. And what do you know, they actually like spinnerbait. After a bit of a struggle, we eventually reel one of them in, and boom. We can now add an ice bream to our caught fish list. Ice breams are a bit interesting, and probably one of the most versatile fish in the entire game. They lower your temperature when holding them, making them function as sort of a organic cooling thermal stone. They drop 1 large fish meat and 2 ice when slain, and finally, when used in a crockpot, they actually provide a frozen value. So if you for some reason want compact and inefficient ceviche, these guys are actually perfect for that. Another benefit of the ice bream is that it can be traded to pearl for a snowy day lure. But why would we want to lure specifically for the snow? You see, unlike most games, fishing becomes less effective when precipitation occurs, dropping by a noticeable 50% for every single bait. Now, for spinners with an already high attraction, this 50% reduction isn't actually too bad, as it brings it on par with spoons. But for already low attraction baits like spoons, it can be detrimental, bringing it on par with rot, the worst bait in the game. That's where the precipitation lures, rainy day and snowy day lures come into play. If you couldn't guess already, snowy day lures have a maximum effectiveness while it is snowing, and are fundamentally useless when it's not snowing, making them highly niche. But with how often it snows during winter and how cheap the recipe is, it wouldn't actually be a terrible idea for us to grab some. But again, spinners are still pretty effective even with the 50% reduction. So with that lecture about ice breams over, we spent the remainder of the day battling Wavy Jones while sailing towards our favorite crabby hermit to get that snowy day lure blueprint. And some friendship. But of course, we would get sidetracked once again. Day 26 started with a surprise visit from one of the few ocean bosses, Malbatross. Now, the reason Malbatross spawned in is because we actually crossed their shoal, and it has a percentage chance to spawn. So while Malbatross is neutral, there's a few reasons why we may want to defeat the beast. The main one being the bill, the best ore in the game. So with my mind set on that and my heart racing, because this would be my first time fighting Malbatross, I spend day 26 preparing a battle boat, consisting of an anchor to prevent Malbatross from sending our boat flying with the waves that it produces, and a fire pit to stay warm. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the SS Malby, named after the bird we would hopefully be defeating tomorrow. And before I knew it, tomorrow was here. On day 27, we geared up and set sail on the SS Malby to fight the dreaded bird of doom.
Should just hit her with the oar. This is so far not that bad. Oh, I'm out of range. Come on. I can get 6 hits in, it seems. And the attack range is... Yeah, that one hit me. Alright. Come here. Come here. Oh, you're starting to make waves now, huh, aren't ya? Come on. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. It's all good, it's all good.
The battle didn't even take a day. Malbatross, the guardian of the shoal, was defeated. Ironically, that was my first time fighting the beast too. The kiting pattern was incredibly simple and easy to learn, and the boat damage was incredibly negligible. But the ore that we obtained would allow us to traverse the world at speeds we never once thought obtainable. I spent the remainder of the day celebrating with some otter extermination, because seriously, I hate these things. Another benefit of defeating Malbatross is that its shoals are now ripe for the picking. With no guardian, I catch almost all of the sea bass inhabiting the shoal, and end my fishing trip halfway through dusk with a total of 8 deep bass stored away safely. It was safe to say we wouldn't be going hungry anytime soon. At this point, I had felt pretty invincible. We had defeated a boss and got enough food to probably single-handedly carry us through the rest of winter. And to top it all off, we had caught the ice bream, the only limited time fish of winter. To say I was on cloud 9 would be an understatement, but Don't Starve is kinda funny though, and it knows when to knock you down, because right when we arrived at Pearl's Island... No, what are they gonna take? With nowhere to go, and not enough speed to run, I had no choice but to once again submit to the raid. This time they brought even more powder monkeys with them, and they took a whole lot more than just my driftwood. All of my boat repair kits, my cut stone, and pretty much everything that wasn't bolted down, they took. As they left me sitting there, embarrassed, while Pearl tried to fish through my boat, screaming no trespassing. Thank you, Pearl. Regardless though, it was day 29 and we had a job to do. Despite the thieves stealing our floor items, we still had two important things: our fish and our life. With those, there was no way to go but up. I traded my heaviest ice bream to Pearl, and in turn she gave me the Snowy Day Lure blueprint and access to her store, which allowed me to buy the Pinch and Winch blueprint. This would be essential for treasure hunting, which is a great source of mid-game gear. I then finally had a brain blast late at night, as I realized there must be a reason why fish aren't attracted to my spinners. And that's because spinners won't attract small fish. For some reason, my brain thought lure more expensive equals better lure, which is true to a degree, but also not for every fish. So I put some rot on the end of my rod, and sure enough, I finally had caught myself a new fish, a bitty baitfish, the rarest small fish in the game, but not exactly the hardest one to catch. On day 30, I didn't actually do much during the day, mostly gathering wood around Pearl's Island, but late in the night, I decided to use this new information I had to catch that strange looking fish I had seen near the seaweeds. That's when it jumped out of the water and put my fire out. Whatever this fish was, it wasn't just hard to catch, but also a little troll. Luckily, I'd spent the rest of the night by lantern light, but that's when I vowed that that elusive tricky fish would be mine one day. Day 31 was designated as a sailing day. While our new fancy Malbatross bill allowed us to sail at maximum speeds, it was still Don't Starve Together sailing, which is slow and clunky. And our destination was a small plateau that I wanted to turn into my super awesome aquarium, and so we set sail for it. And thankfully, nothing interesting happened at all today. Yes, that's a good thing. Day 32 was here and I almost made landfall, but that's when I decided to gather some treasure first. We crafted and placed down a pinch and winch before heading to our first treasure spot, and up we fished a gigantic treasure chest. Now the loot table of these bad boys are actually pretty insane, and I just couldn't wait to crack it open, but patience is a virtue, and I wanted to make sure this unboxing would be worth it, so I sailed out for our second treasure under the cover of darkness. And on day 33, we got it. Two beautiful treasure chests ready to be opened. But first I wanted to do it on land just to be safe. So it was back to the spot I had found earlier. Unfortunately, this is where we encountered the second sanity monster of the ocean, and the only deadly one, the Terror Claw. Now, these guys are literally just terror beaks on water. In fact, if you are being chased by terror beaks and enter a boat, they will become these things and vice versa. But they are more simple to defeat than terror beaks. Since they fix onto one side of your boat, you can very easily dodge their attack, get a hit in, and then repeat wherever they teleport to. These can quickly overwhelm you, however, if 3 of them spawn, so it's best to deal with them ASAP, which is what we spend the night doing. Day 34 was when we docked on land, opened our chest, and did all of the things we planned. Wait, no, you're watching a Polarlotus video. So here's what I actually did today. On my way to the spot, I got sidetracked once again by 2 new fish. That strange spitting fish and a different kind of orange fish. Both had eluded me before, so now it was time for a rematch. Eventually, late into the night, I got a bite, but this fish put up a fight. And of course, snapped my line. But that didn't stop me from trying again, when Wavy Jones cut the trip short, ruining my night completely. That means we spent lots of effort today, but got no new fish, which feels pretty bad. So today was the day. I was tired of being bullied by these 2 fish, so I was gonna fish for them quite literally until I drop. First, I targeted the strange spitting fish, when suddenly it bit. This was it. finally, all I had to do was beat the minigame, and the elusive fish was mine. That's when it happened. We had caught ourselves the aptly named spittlefish. These small fish spawn near seaweeds and will spit on fires nearby. They can be hard to catch because of the fact that seaweeds will distract them from your bait, but once one is on your line, they are actually pretty easy. Their only crafting use is to make the fire pump, which is practically the only way you can stop your boat from burning if you're not playing as Willow. So I guess it's alright, but it still puts out your campfire, so I don't know. But the spittlefish wasn't our only target. Next up, the fish that had cost me the most tackle. I hooked one on and struggled with it, even struggling through literal starvation, and eventually it was I who lost, realizing that if I didn't pull this guy up soon, I may actually be in real danger. Did this mean I gave up on it? Hell no. In the middle of the night, I decided it was time to finally catch this thing, so I caught one on my line, and struggled, and just when it looked like my fire was going to go out, I caught myself a dandy lionfish. The hardest fish to catch in the entire game, as it has the most fight in it, but funny enough, provides as much meat as the easy to catch sea bass. So really, this fish should be avoided at all costs, unless, like me, you want an aquarium of every fish for some reason. Day 36 was the start of spring, but you would be forgiven if you couldn't tell because, you know, the insanity filter. Either way, finally we would be doing the original plan of preparing our dock and aquarium. We rolled into the spot, dropped off the chest, and prepared the unboxing, where we got nothing incredibly interesting. I mean, the archaic boat is cool and all, but I really didn't want to rebuild my boat again. We also got some heavyweight lures, which are useful for befriending Pearl, as they only attract heavy fish, of which she likes. But Pearl was in Moon K territory, and I really didn't want to get robbed again, so she was off limits for the time being. We end the day by collecting resources, and then setting sail to gather some food, as we had a journey ahead of us. The next few days are about to go by pretty fast, but that's because what we did connects between each day. So, are you ready? Alright, let's go. After catching a lot of bass on day 37, we sail back home, and on day 38, we begin exploring the mainland. Day 39 is when the exploration gets good as we find the terrarium and the Pig King, which meant more boards and cut stone, essential materials for the many fish scalomatics we would need. And finally, on day 40, we deposit these resources back at base, and then finally realize that now would be a good time to set sail to try to obtain some more fish, because we still had a bit more to go. And at this point, we were over halfway done with our time limit. And luckily for us, late on day 41, we find it, the spring fish. And after a not-so struggle, we had caught the bloomfin tuna, a fish that provides leafy meat and can be traded to Pearl for the rainy day lure blueprint, which I went over earlier. We also had caught another corn cod, you know, like the one that we had to eat in a starving panic earlier in the run, so we were finally starting to really make some serious progress on this list. But now it was time to provide these guys with somewhat of a home, at least a more permanent one. So on day 42, we had finally constructed a few fish scalomatics. This allowed us to lock in a few of our fish. Now they were safe from harm pretty much forever. Unfortunately, this project cost us the entire day, but it really showed its beauty on day 43. Look at all these fishies. A bit of flooring and this would look amazing. Of course, we still had quite a few fish that we needed to catch, so we set sail to the nearby shoal to collect some bass and prepare for one of our largest expeditions yet. On day 44, we started the Great Journey. Our goal was to find the waterlogged biome, aka the giant water tree. This was because one fish, the Swedish fish, makes its home there. It's an easy fish to catch, but because waterlogged biomes can be tough to track down, it would require some searching. On our way to the elusive biome, we found a set piece that I swore was trapped, but actually turned out to be awesome, as it provided us with a Starcaller's staff for basically free, destroyed some otter dens, deserved by the way, got attacked by a shark who forgot about us soon after, and finally, late on day 46, we had found it, a waterlogged biome. This not only would allow us to find one of our final fish, but also gave us nutritious figs, which I would allow as they technically grow from the water. Unfortunately, no Swedish fish appeared today. But on day 47, we found and captured the Swedish fish. We didn't have much longer to go. With almost all fish obtained, we pretty much only needed one more general fish, as the other missing one would only show up during summer. So that was our next goal. And we set sail for home, which would of course be another multi-day journey, since our Malbatross bill had broken. Day 48 surprised me though. On the way home, we had found the final general fish. This was it, the last fish we needed to catch before summer. We set out our rod and caught it, the runty guppy. Another variation of small fish that's kind of meh. Honestly, these small guys are really kind of pointless, but of course, for our mission, he was essential. I also decided to make a pit stop to grab some silk. Why? Well, our sanity wasn't actually doing that great, and I decided that maybe a top hat would be a good solution to that. So on day 49, I made a fancy top hat, and then we actually set sail for home. We arrived home on day 51 and decided that now that we have all of this time waiting for summer, that it would be a good time to build. So that's exactly what we did for the next few days, while also fighting the Eye of Terror for that sweet refuelable helmet. Our building times were cut short by a sudden threat that I had forgotten about, hound waves. Because we have been spending so much time on land, it actually allowed one to spawn. And on day 56, the start of summer, we were attacked by not a hound wave, but a varglid. And I'll be honest, my performance here was actually pretty poor, so I resorted to the tried and true method of running away and dealing with it another day. But that day would never come. After successfully escaping, I had the finishing touches on our aquarium done, and I gotta say, this is looking pretty snazzy. Now all we need to do is find the elusive final fish. And so we set up some plans for a great summer fish journey, which includes finally crafting up a super sail and wheel. This time, we weren't playing around. But before our journey could start, on day 59 we had come across another Malbatross. And honestly, I missed my super ore a good bit, and this Malbatross was in the same exact shoal as our SS Malby, so you know what that means. On day 60, we head out for a rematch. With the rematch successfully done, we could finally set out on our search for the elusive summer fish. Now day 65. Summer wasn't exactly about to end per se, but I had been so unlucky with finding this fish that I started getting worried. We even had sailed into the dangerous side of the map, so we were liable to be raided any second. That's when it appeared, the elusive summer fish. I threw my rod out and caught it and struggled, even through starvation. That's when, boom, the sunfish. This fish, much like the ice bream, acts as a thermal stone, but provides heat instead of cold, and can be traded to Pearl to learn how to craft a heavy-weighted lure, of which I went over earlier. But most importantly, it was my final fish. I celebrated and felt like I had finally finished this challenge that I genuinely didn't think I was going to finish because of the diet restriction. But remember, this is Don't Starve. This time, I was not having it. I used my Malbatross oar and rowed as fast as I could. And as I thought I was getting away from a fate of just getting my loot stolen again, that's when they shot a cannon at me. These pirates didn't want to just steal my stuff, they wanted to sink my boat and end my run just as I had found the final fish. Talk about comedic timing. I had no choice but to pop down my sail and go into full speed mode to escape them. The chase was on and the sound of monkeys paddling filled my ears, but we just barely managed to keep a lead on them. Even after I stopped hearing the paddling, I refused to stop, sailing full speed all the way home, where we docked and waited for them to show to commence the final battle. But they never came. I was relieved, and the challenge was over, as the sunfish, our final fish, was secured fully. And so, on day 67, we had completed the challenge. We had collected every single ocean fish, while living on a water-based diet and a land-based sanity drain without dying once. The ultimate fishing challenge complete. But would I consider myself the ultimate fisherman after this challenge? Actually, yeah, I would. Fishing, unlike farming, is actually surprisingly easy to master fully. There's much less math and much less micromanaging. Just head out on a boat with some tackle and catch some fish. That's all you gotta do. But I would argue this challenge was magnitudes harder than my farming challenge because of one key difference. It's much, much harder to get early game fish than it is to get early game forageables. I mean, look at how many times we starved throughout this challenge. One of these times even almost cost us the entire run. As with my other challenge videos, if you for some reason want to watch the entire run unedited, well, all 11 hours of it are up, with full commentary on my extras channel. So if you want to see that, it's down in the description below. Either way, this has been Polarlotus, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.